Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to this inaugural webinar conducted by Sage Publication in association with the Research and Publication Unit of Faculty of Management Studies of Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. First of all, let me welcome the speaker of the session, Professor Sudhir Rana from FIIB, New Delhi, with a great respect. Dr. Sudhir Rana is an associate professor of marketing and FPM and the chairperson at the Fortune Institute of International Business. His research is published by world-class journals such as Journal of Business Research, International Journal of Emerging Market, Journal of Promotion, Management, Advanced International Marketing, Review of International Business and Strategy, and many more. He holds, ladies and gentlemen, he holds an MBA and PhD with MHRD scholarship from Government of India. And he's also having a postdoctorate from Putra Business Schools, right? And University Putra of Malaysia. He is the editor of FIIB Business Review, Sage Publication, South Asian Journal of Marketing, published by Emerald, and Advances in Emerging Marketers and Business Operation, published by Routledge and Thailand Proceeds, moreover. He was also appointed as a senior editor of International Journal of Emerging Marketing, published by Emerald Publishing. He is a researcher at heart and spent all his time either teaching or in research work. So we are very blessed to have a speaker like this. He has been mentioning budding researchers. From Sudhir, it is very much appreciated your acceptance to conduct this session, right? Despite of all your busy schedule. And I also like to welcome Mrs. Aarti Devi, Director Publishing at Sage Publication India Private Limited. She was instrumental in designing this webinar to South Asian scholars. Then with the gratitude, let me welcome Mrs. Neetu Kerala, Associate Vice President, Journal Commissioning and Management, and Mrs. Rehna Segar, Assistant Commissioning Editor, Journal of Sage Publishing India Private Limited. Then with the gratitude, let me welcome the marketing team, including Sanya Puri, Archana, JHA, and headed by Mrs. Smriti Sudhakaran. In fact, they are the energy behind this inaugural research webinar. I also, dear ladies and gentlemen, I also can't forget the giant force behind the organizing from Sri Lankan, from our faculty, with the leadership of our Dean, Professor Atula Nyanapala, Dean, Faculty of Management Studies, and Dr. Jayantha Devasri, and our Publication Unit Secretary, Dr. Tilni Gamane, for this wonderful, event to, on behalf of faculty of the Research and Publication Unit at Sabaragamuwa University of Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. So at least, but of course, those audience, mainly our academic from all universities in South Asia, senior professors, senior lecturers, and research students are welcome to this event for making the success session lively and a success event. So before summing it up, let me announce your main purpose of this research webinar. In celebration of the establishment of the Research and Publication Unit of Faculty of Management Studies of Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, in conducting this webinar series as the inaugural webinar, today's session will provide you a comprehensive understanding about conducting systematic literature review. Thank you very much for you all joining us. So I would like to invite today's our speaker, so most eminent resource person in South Asia, Professor Sudhir Rana, to address the gathering. Professor Sudhir, so over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Aslam. And it's a really good initiative by Sabaragamuwa University to facilitate the scholars. And I'm going to share my experience on having systematic literature review, that what systematic literature review is, what are the methods, how do you implement it, how do you begin. So something that I'm going to share is my own experience being an editor, being a scholar, and being a reader, of course. So when I'm talking about keeping my three experiences into line. One is that when I began my research journey, how organizing literature and conducting literature reviews has helped me out. Second, I would see that being a scholar, what are the challenges that I faced and how you can overcome with those. And third is being an editor, when we see any research paper and more specifically on literature review, what are our expectations and how we would like to see the research papers based on systematic literature reviews. So the agenda for this webinar that we kept, like uh, Professor Aslam have also discussed with you, that what we are going to discuss today is we are going to understand the process of literature review. Literature review, specifically in science and management domain, is a little bit different than the other literature. Other literature that we talk about, literature related to poems, literature related to uh, storage. So that literature is somewhat different than the literature review that we talk about specifically for scientific publications. Hence, it's a different process to go. While you read it, you write it, and you publish it. Second, the main issue that I would like to highlight is the myths and methods. It is understood sometime that literature review papers are just theoretical papers, and they somewhere, if there is no data, if there is no empirical results, authors used to claim it as a literature review paper. So therefore, I would like to specifically talk about that how you systematically organize the literature that you read, and what are the types and methods that you can incorporate in planning and publishing your literature review based studies. Coming over to the first aspect, which I use as a fact, the fact is that empirical research papers have a very good format by all the journals, by all the publishers, and by all the domains. If you see in the medical sciences, they have a pattern of publishing empirical papers. If you see in sciences, they have a pattern of publishing empirical papers, and same in the management and sociology. We also have a pattern of publishing empirical papers. But when you see it comes to theoretical papers, then what theoretical papers struggle for? The theoretical papers and theoretical scholars, they struggle for a common accepted template, a template that can guide them, that this is what you need to do, this is what you need not to do, this is what you should include, this is what you should not include, or say this is what you should read, this is what you can leave. So there are multiple challenges have been discussed by the scholars earlier, that when you start reading the literature, from where you should start when it comes to collecting the literature basis on quantity and quality. How do you differentiate it to what you say quality, to what you say is important? Because there are a number of indexings, there are a number of rankings that create a kind of confusion in the scholar's mind, that what should I choose and what should I leave. So we, keeping this fact in mind, that there is not a single common template, yet what we are trying to establish, we are trying to establish a kind of method or kind of types that can go to a particular literature review paper. And when somebody systematically organize this literature, then how this should look like. Moving on, just think about it. think that is a literature review paper similar to the theoretical paper, something that you read from the magazines, from the newspapers, from the website contents? Do you think that that can have the capacity to produce a high quality literature review paper? And do you really count these contents collected from newspapers, magazines, or websites to have a literature review paper? That is my first question that you may like to think over. And the second is that do necessarily these literature review paper has to have a process, or do you actually need to distinguish the theoretical papers from the literature review papers, or literature review papers amongst themselves also have another types? So when it comes that how do you differentiate between the literature review paper and other theoretical paper, I would just say that literature review papers are about reviewing the scientific publications. And when we say scientific publications, the scientific publications include the peer review publications, the publication which are being reviewed by your peers, and also having a review process. So it may be a blind review, it may be an open review, and these are being published by the scientific journals. I do not distinguish them between academic and practitioner journals, but every research that comes on the scientific ground get accommodated into the scientific journals. So journals that follow the rigor and relevance approach basically are known as scientific journals. So anything that is published into the scientific publication outlet should be included to review if you're specifically planning for a literature review paper. And rest you can keep for the theory building, for conceptualization, for bringing your own knowledge and understanding to a level where you can express yourself more clearly to make your topic well understood. So let me come straightly to the point and say that it's a myth that literature review paper doesn't have a method. Literature review is itself a method, and the papers which are based on literature review must have a methodology section. So I believe that papers that do not have a methodology section may lack in explicitly clarifying that what has been the procedure of conducting this paper, or also whether bringing clarity on what you have included what you have not included. Therefore method should be there. It cannot be that there is no method, only empirical papers can have method. It's a myth. So have a method for literature review papers. Second, these are not only the papers without data. So we think that, okay, in an empirical paper, I have collected data either through interviews or through a questionnaire or schedule, or I have collected the secondary data from some websites or data banks, and I applied some procedures, statistical procedures on it, and deliberating the results. And where I do not have any data to analyze, we simply claim them as a literature review paper or theoretical papers. It is not. You need to create some data points for literature review papers too. And we will discuss that what these data points can be and how you're going to analyze those. The third argument is a new argument in the literature. It was not used to be earlier, but in the past 2 decades, this area is emerging. This is that are conceptual papers different from the literature review paper? There are scholars who believe that concepts need to be presented with with the literature, prior literature, or literature reviews should lead to concepts. And therefore, some scholars like me are coming up with the ways that how both literature and concepts can be presented hand in hand together. And some are trying to make a difference that it is more about advancing the tech, I mean, using the advanced technologies and software to interpret the prior literature, and literature review papers explain what has been done. But something that remains significant always is that something that has already been done is static in nature. Any significant output and research should lead to what the future would be. So what the future would be of the literature review that you're doing, where that literature review is leading you to, what are the prominent areas that you have explored or you can explore by having this literature review done, or what is basis on what has been done, what can you suggest that what more can be done, what more can be explored, what are the challenges, what should the publication outlets do, what should, where should scholars invest more energy or should focus on the areas where possibility of getting more publications or contributing more knowledge is. So you need to think about it. Though I would say that there can be a blend of both conceptual papers and literature review papers, or if you want, you can significantly position the papers differently. You can have a conceptual paper separate and a literature review paper separate. So, but something that you really need to consider is these 7 points. These 7 points are basically to conceptualize the idea. Any literature review paper should not be just static on documenting or counting what has been done. So probably you may not say that, hey, I'm working on green marketing. On green marketing, I have found these 200 papers, and these 200 papers are talking about these heads. That would not be sufficient to get your paper published in a scientific journal or in a good category journal, or maybe it would not motivate readers also to read that paper, because readers would like to know that what is that newness, or what is, after reading so much, that you have come up with. And and if you have come up with, then how it can be useful to these scholars. Hence these 7 criterias, if you just went down and keep into consideration that what it is that you are going to work on, so that can lead to what's new. And if you think that yes, it is new, for example, you come up that yes, human augmentation is new, or augmented reality is new, or big data analysis is new, so what? So you need to justify that yes, it is new and this is how the future is going to be. Why? So you need to answer that this is how the cross functioning or multi-disciplines are working, or this is how it can be useful for this particular domain. The point 4 and 5 look similar, but they are dissimilar. The fourth point says that this is well done, and the fifth says done well. So the fourth point is that you have maintained the rigor and depth, and you have done this job really well. So you was wanted to know about green marketing, you have explored the depth of it, and at the same time you maintained the rigor of it. And fifth point is about organization of the study. So you have presented everything in an apple pie order and very organized in an organized manner, but something that you should answer more specifically when you are talking about a very new topic, or you're talking about a traditional topic. And I face this question being myself as a scholar, and I also ask this question to the authors who submit paper to my journals. It is that sometimes they come up with a review paper where number of studies are really less. They say that this topic is at very infancy stage and need to be reviewed. And I generally, this question bounce in my mind, and I also ask them, then why now? Why don't you wait for this situation to be matured? I remember it really well when we were participating in some of the editorial meets. I have been a part of some of these myself, and we were debating when COVID-19 started that should these journals publish COVID-19 papers or not. And for first 2 months, we have really been thinking that should we take any research based on COVID-19 experiences or data points, or should we wait? And there were a number of debates that why now? Should we not wait? And there were some people who were saying, some editors who were saying that yes, we should take it. And so this is, you need to justify that why having this literature review done now is important. Maybe this is too soon to do it, or it is too late to do it. But you being an author, you need to justify that it is adequate to do it. It is justified to do it now. There your role comes. So your editors and reviewers will have a question that why do you want to review a specific time period, or why do you want to review a specific concept now? You need to be prepared for this question. And the seventh point is about the stakeholders. Who cares? Generally, we see that literature review papers are being used or read by the area scholars. And more of the things that we mention in the review papers are being used by the domain in which we are working. Upcoming scholars, and more specifically the PhD students who join that particular domain, they read review papers to explore that what are the areas that they can work on, what is previous literature is saying about in this domain, what is available, what is not available. To have those ideas, they read it. But is it the only stakeholder or reader of your paper? Let me remind you, and I'm sharing one experience. When I started reading and I had an idea of writing a review paper, the basic idea that I took was from a paper of electronics engineering. And this paper was about semiconductors. I really liked that paper, and I aimed that I should have a paper like this. So you need to understand that who cares if you review? Are you reviewing it for your own self just because you need to do your PhD, you need to do some literature review, therefore you want to do, or you want to publish a paper because it is your requirement, therefore you want to do. I mean, or this would be useful for the journal to publish it, this would be useful for your domain scholars to publish it. Who cares about it? Who cares about the topic? Whom it is going to be useful is very important for us to understand when we begin with this literature review paper. Something that is about literature review papers are that you need to do a critical evaluation. The the papers, and more specifically, if you talk about the scientific methods, are aimed or are developed to see that you can critically evaluate the material available. Maybe you can say that something has been done, not has been done, or there can be the definitions which are oxymoron with each other, which do not match. Somebody says that no, this is what RBT is, and somebody else may say that this is what RBT is. And you may also like to see that what is the network of that theoretical domain is talking about. So just think about it. Your job is to make a critical evaluation. Your job is to make a progressive evaluation of the previous literature. You need to raise certain questions. So you look, your role is that you need to raise the questions and answer those. So you are going to first evaluate the specific research questions that you are raising in that particular domain, whether this has been done properly, not done properly, mentioned properly, lagging behind, need to be developed, need to be reconceptualized, need to be re-established, needs to be reinterpreted. So what is that? You would like to raise a question. You would like to raise a question on the content completeness of it. You would like to raise a question on the knowledge domain of it, whether knowledge is sufficient, insufficient. You would like to raise questions that the usage has not been done properly. It can be used more, but more lenses are required to look at it, or you would just like to give a state of art of it, that this is what has been done and more can be done on the basis of it. So what is that you have chosen about this topic? Review papers should include all this. If you like to know more about the systematic reviews, you may like to read the book by Little et al. This is available with Oxford. And something that before we start, like I'm going to discuss that how systematic literature review paper should look like and how literature review people need to be organized. Something that you need to understand is systematic, as its word also says, is a way of systematically organizing literature. So you have abundant of literature available. Today there are a number of publication outlets, number of publishers, number of publication outlets, and these number of publication outlets are producing a very large number of papers. So for one scholar of that particular domain, is it actually feasible to read everything which is being published? It seems really difficult, and I'm honestly saying, when it comes somebody who has chosen a very general topic, then it is very difficult to distinguish whether can I read everything so that I do not escape anything which is important. Should I scroll through everything, or how should I start, and what should I do? There, review articles are helpful, and review articles, if they match the purpose that you kept, they would act like a bible to you to begin your research journey in that particular domain. But if it comes to the the mismatch of the orientation, then review papers will not be that useful. And therefore, we are debating on having a common template or understanding of presenting the previous literature in a way that it can be useful to more and more scholars. Either they are working in the direct domain that you're working in, or they are working in the allied domain that you're working in. So they all need to understand what is there in the main or allied domain related to that particular theme. Something that you should really work on before you begin is the purpose. What is the purpose that you're writing this literature review? I receive number of papers as an editor that, okay, I have been a PhD student. I did a literature review for my PhD thesis. Would you be able to publish this literature review? And when I read those literature review, many of them are written for themselves. They were they present hypotheses into it. Sometimes they present some variables into it, and these are very specific to their PhD topics. And when somebody have already done a PhD or doing a PhD on the same variables or with the same hypothesis, these are not very useful for others Reason being that others are looking for another topic, and they cannot simply have the hypothesis or variable that one has picked up. This has to be different. So whenever you begin to write a literature review paper, you really need to keep the bigger picture in mind. The bigger picture in mind can be that you want to review the domain for a, for a region, and what is that region? You need to establish that region, that you want to review it because of this, and you want to write this review paper because these are the regions. So having a simple review is not something that make you to sail through or end up publishing with the desired journal. There may be a number of questions that why are you writing this review paper? What is the need? You read the literature for your own knowledge and understanding. Perfectly fine. You did it because it was a part of your PhD process. Perfectly fine. But what is the purpose of writing this literature review paper? First, you should have a very broad picture in mind that you're going to begin with, and see that what are the puzzles that you can solve by having this literature review. There are a number of puzzles available in the literature. This can be that there are multiple school of thoughts of looking at something. There are multiple uh, pathways that a concept has traveled through. You may look at these and keep a purpose that looks more common. So it should not look like your own purpose. It should look like a community purpose that scholars in this particular domain would like to know. The purpose should be like that. Second is the process. What process have you incorporated or you are following to make this literature review paper? Has your process been systematic or it has not been systematic? Are the things transparent and clear in the process? Can anybody who reads your paper can understand from where you begin, what you did, and where you reached, or not? Or it is just like a mess that you do not know from where you started and you do not know where you are landing. So you understanding this process is very important, and more for any type of literature review, and specifically for systematic literature review, because systematic literature reviews are known for its transparency. So process should be transparent, that this is how I have searched the literature, this is how I reached to the keywords and the journal articles that I have selected, and this is how I have documented and interpreted it. The last point is about structure. So when it comes to the structure, you cannot afford of avoiding the methodology section, and you also cannot afford on eliminating the analysis or results section from the literature review papers. So when you are writing a systematic literature review paper, try to look at some of the systematically done literature review papers. I'm going to show you a lot of samples now, a couple of samples, so you will have an idea that how these literature review papers should look like, what are the things to be done, and how the structure should be. Typically, there are 6 sections in any of the research papers, starting from abstract to future research agenda or implication. But something in structure which is very different from the empirical paper is future research agenda. Empirical papers can afford to write implications of what has been done in that in that particular paper. But literature review papers aim to have a future research agenda in a broad sense. So you should have some sections or some pages that based on this literature, what can be done in future and how the future of this domain should look like. What is that future scholars can do in this domain? And this should not only touch to what you're doing, it should be more broader so that, like I said, that it can fetch or it can attract to more stakeholders. Somebody who is working in the same domain or somebody who is working in the allied domain may like to see, read your paper that how this particular domain is doing. For example, in economics, there are two things which are coming up. One is the health economics and second is the tourism economics. So health and tourism economics, if I am an economics scholar, I am right now confused that should I go for health economics or should I go for tourism economics. And the review papers from both the domains would help me out understanding not only what health economics and tourism economics are doing, but also that what are the general economic fundamentals which are being used in both kind of economies, whether I'm in the health economics and the tourism economics. And what my understanding would become is that I would understand some of these fundamental constituents that would act like a knowledge foundation for me. Therefore, anybody who will come and would like to do research in economics, would like to progress research in economics, your paper should be useful to them. And there should be the number of research agendas listed for scholars. So in the structure, please have that point separately. That future research agenda is one of the backbone that drives literature review papers. Second, when we come to the purpose, that how the first point, which is purpose, that what are the purpose that the kind of purpose that you can have on writing a systematic literature review. For the literature review, you need to see that what is the scope of the topic, and you may like to outline this has been overflooded. Many research has been done, but the usage is less and it looks ambiguous, or falling shorter, something important but have never been discussed, something important but eyes could not catch that. I mean, what is that? The topic that you have chosen is it's ambiguous or different than others or niche. What is that? So you need to find the scope of the topic. So what the scope of the topic is, what scope of the theme is, should be your purpose. And what more you can do is you can integrate and synthesize. When I'm saying integrate, you may bring in something from other domain to your domain, and I'll show you certain samples. We recently worked on a paper which is on nostalgia, and nostalgia have been looked into the psychology domain, but consumer behavior is more of psychological. And we found that nostalgia is one of the way on which marketers are capitalizing their marketing efforts. And we integrated it. We integrated the psychological concepts with the marketing concepts, and we synthesized it. And we saw that how the current knowledge domain is in both the domains, the control current knowledge structure is, and how we can build more knowledge on the basis of these. So this can be done. And second is that you're looking for inconsistencies. When I'm saying inconsistencies, you may see that something that has been done by some, not been done by others, or you may like to explore that something, if used, there are a number of studies which says that if anything can be used, added or removed, the results will be better. So maybe because there are a number of literature which are being cited or being used nowadays, and this is what I'm talking about, future of literature reviews. It says that I think one moderator important, and the other thing the other moderator important in the literature, and the third one thinks the third moderator important. Let us talk about simple the service quality and customer satisfaction. There is a lot of work being done on service quality and customer satisfaction. Somebody says that it depends on value proposition. Somebody would say it depends on customer knowledge. Somebody would say it depends on service scape. It depends on time. Somebody would say it depends on contact. So there would be number of mediators and moderators used. And when you will see the research claiming these, you will find that each work of these is important in itself. But think about somebody who is delivering that service. Is it really possible, or does it really things feasible for that person to incorporate everything? Because the number of research that we are producing, it is look almost impossible to incorporate or apply each research which is being published. Then you need to, review papers come into the picture and answer that this moderator have these results, this moderator have these results, and you may like to interpret the studies based on these. That yes, these are number of influential moderators or mediators, but when you use this constituent or this variable as a mediator, these are the effect. When you use another one, these are the results. When you use the third one, these are the results. So something like this is can be done in an established area. And in an area which is at infancy stage, you may like to pick up the more mediators and moderators or measures to propose on, so that other scholars come and would like to test that, okay, through these mediators or these moderators would result be different. So you may like to synthesize that from the research scope of the prior studies. This is what generally we do. We look at that how the previous studies can be used in future, but something that really did not get synthesized in the literature is that what the future research says in those papers. In those papers, whatever has been said, has that been done or not? For example, you're working into the same area, uh, service quality and customer satisfaction, and you pick up the most cited articles, and you see that what have they spoke, what they have spoke in, or what was the future research that they claimed 20 years ago, 30 years ago to now, and then match it with the past 5 years research that they asked to do the research in this direction, but has that been done or not? If that could have been done, what are the kind of findings that they were claiming? And you may explore the gap. So some inconsistencies you can explore. Then you may like to evaluate the methodological approaches, and you may see that by having this methodology, these are the results. So if you're using the panel data in structured way, for example, then these are the results that you are going to get. If you use panel data in an unstructured way, then what kind of results will you have? Or if you will use structural equation modeling, then what is the expected result that you're going to get? Or if you're using PLSM, then through PLS or through MOs, then what are the things that you're going to get different? So these kind of things will help the upcoming scholars to focus more that should I learn the PLSM or should I learn the AMOS, structural equation modeling through AMOS? Or maybe if somebody has not used the structural equation modeling, somebody has used regression analysis for the same purpose. So you may like to explore that what methodology has given the strongest results or better results, or you may also like to see that that which has been given more scientific weight. Are people citing more to structural equation modeling, or are people citing more to the regression analysis? So you may like to explore those things through. You can also look at how the flow of the concept goes. There can be inconsistencies, and there can be that one literature has not been used with the soul and purpose to what they tend to. There has been a reason that a paper has been written 2 decades ago, and today, what is the strength of that particular concept? Is it the same way? And let me give you some example. Is BOP actually a BOP today? Bottom of pyramid. Has bottom of pyramid changed over the period of time? Because number of economies that were in the poor economies have transversed themselves into the emerging economies, developing economies. So is BOP bottom of pyramid same in those economy, or is the concept of bottom of pyramid changed over the period of time? And if you need to reach to the people who are at the bottom of pyramid, will it be the same way, or has technology influenced anything on reaching to those people who are below the poverty line? So you may like to draw another conceptual diagram and review what people have spoke about bottom of pyramid, and you may like to see that is it same, different, and like to review the previous literature. So you can also do that, and you would like to explain that what the research gaps are. How did you explore these research gap? Why do you think this as a gap? Because something that you think, and you think that is not mentioned in the previous literature, cannot be a research gap. This is what I face many time being editor, that people put a paper that this has not been done, and that has actually not been done. But the question is that relevant to the literature? Because you are not the first one to read and work in this particular domain. There are multiple scholars who are working together, and what we do as a journal are we host the common views, the people who have common views and common debates. We just host the common debates. So you are not the first one to look at this particular domain. There are a number of people who are working. Well, is it relevant to them? Do they really agree this as a research gap? The previous experiences shown by the community scholars, are they also talking, or they also agreed that okay, such gap can be there or not? So you need to establish a background if you're talking about a research gap. So research gap need to be presented as a type of background to the research, that yes, this is what the background in background the literature is, and this is what I feel as a gap, and then lead to future research direction. Like I have been emphasizing more that a literature review, if a literature review paper do not lead to future research direction, it is as good as not having a literature review paper. So I specifically do not think a good idea to have literature review paper that do not have future research direction, because it is like a blood in body. So future research directions are similar in a literature review paper. Let's talk about the process now. If you look at the Tranfield in 2003 and 4, this is what you need to do. There are 4 steps. The first step says planning the review. When you're planning the review, like I discussed in the 7 steps too, you need to explore that what is the need of doing it. Should you actually do it or not? Will there be any takers, any readers? Takers are the journals. That will there be journals who can publish it? And if yes, of what stature? What are the kind of journals that you can target this kind of review paper? Second, will there be readers who would like to read it? Are you talking about something that would be relevant to read based on the previous literature for the readers that you're talking about? And then you need to develop a protocol. You need to bring a scientific rigor into it when you're planning. Suppose you're planning a time frame, that I'm planning a time frame to review digital marketing from 2000 onwards or 2010 onwards. Then develop a protocol. Or for example, you're talking about economic reforms, then you have chosen certain timelines. This timeline justification become very important for economic and financial studies. And these are very easy to identify also, though other domains struggle a little bit to justify a particular time span that they have chosen. But this is very important for the review studies into finance and economic domain to have a particular timeline that they are reviewing for past 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, or particular timeline. Why? So a protocol need to be developed, and ac- according to the protocol, that the process, you need to identify and evaluate the studies. So when you will identify the studies, you need to evaluate them, that is it actually matching, not matching, is it what will contribute into the purpose of your literature review paper or not. So what is that? And then you need to extract the findings and synthesize the data. You need to, when you synthesize, you may like to conduct some extractions, or you may like to conduct some synthesis, that who says what. So that can be into a tabular form, or you may also like to use certain softwares that are available today to do that. For example, you may like to go to Leximancer, or you may like to go to WOS Viewer to view that what has been done and what the data says. So there are availables, and then you disseminate the review findings. When you disseminate the review findings, you may like to give the two views to it. The two views would be that you're saying that has been done and this can be projected for future. So two views will help you out in building an understanding and sailing through your paper. If we look traditionally, that how traditionally literature review has been done and how systematic literature review will help you out, is you can look at these pointers. If you look at these pointers, you'll find that why and how systematic literature review has become important to identify the need. So it makes more sense if you look at the development protocol, like we discussed, that literature review, systematic literature reviews are very transparent, and they have an objectivity, and that objectivity need to be spelled out there, that this is why it is being done. And they also have identification of research, and like earlier it has to be subjective, but now it is not. It need to be more structured. And when you are evaluating it, you need to have more transparent protocol. So you cannot say, I read it and this is my understanding. No, people would like to say that something that you're claiming should be based on what. So maybe they would like to have a table there. Maybe they would like to have some assessment of the literature, which is more transparent. So they like to know. And how did you do a data extraction? So how did you conduct the data extraction? They're interested in knowing that how did you read to 500 papers? For example, you're saying that I'm reviewing 500 papers. So they would like to know how did you read to 500 papers? And why did you include these 500? And after that, you would see in the systematic reviews that balancing a concept is there, and that's the beauty of systematic literature reviews. They balance both the concept and the depth. So there are a number of good reasons that you should opt for systematic literature review than the traditional one. So they are time consuming, that I understand. The only thing that is in systematic literature reviews are you need to have good time, you need to have good knowledge. If you do not have knowledge about literature review, you cannot write a systematic literature review. If you do not know what literature says, it is not simply possible to write a systematic literature review, because systematic literature review is not only documenting the number of papers, it's much beyond that. You need to deep dive in the literature and synthesize what it says and why it has been interpreted, why something is like this. So those answers should be there. Something more about, if I say about systematic reviews, so we can you can read it, and this will give you a gist that why systematic reviews are important. Systematic reviews, they aim comprehensively, like I said, that there can be abundant of literature. So what they do, they comprehensively locate and synthesize. So what do they locate and what do they synthesize? A particular question, that why it should be done, and they follow an organized and transparent approach, procedures in each of the steps. So even if you're developing questions, so how did you reach to those questions is important. Why do you think that these questions are relevant is important to justify. And then there are different things that you can do. You may go for a text mining, you may look at the citation co-citation analysis, you may look at the topic modeling. There are different way of doing it, but something that you cannot forget is the comprehensiveness, the questions or objectivity of the papers, being transparent of what you did and what you did not, what you have included and what you have not included, what should be read and what should not be read. So these are certain things that you cannot afford on escaping into systematic reviews. So what you should do is, when you plan for a systematic review, you should first focus about the topic formulation. And when you're doing topic formulation, you start with the bigger picture, like I said, and then create a funnel. So your funnel in the beginning should look like bigger, and then slowly you reach to the end result. So it should be like this. And second that you need to do is the design. There are different ways of doing some systematic literature review that we will discuss in now, but you need to design it, that this is how I'm going to do it. Then you need to pick up samples, that this is what my population is, this is what I have chosen, these are the regions that I have chosen, this has been the process of choosing it, and collect it. You cannot afford to leave anything which is fitting in that criteria. For example, I say that I am reviewing something being published on these 5 keywords in Scopus Q1 journals. So anything which is being published in those keywords in Scopus Q1 journals, I cannot afford to leave those. Or if my criteria is more keywords and Scopus Q2 journal also, then I'll have to make a search there, and I cannot afford to leave it. Then it comes to the data analysis, whether you have done it manually, you have used any softwares to do it, and how exactly you have analyzed the data, how exactly you have done the topic framing or the theme framing, and how did you report the results, that what is that helped you out in reaching to the results. Let me show you a sample of systematic literature review. See here and be with me to see the methodology part. If you see, these authors are talking about harnessing difference, a capability based framework they are talking about in for stakeholder engagement in environment innovation. So let me take you through what they're claiming. If you see, they have claimed that an integrative systematic review of evidence from 88 scientific articles finds it. So something that they have done is they have included the scientific articles, 88 scientific articles, and based on those, they have brought some results. So if you see from the beginning, there are some practitioners point given for the reader's understanding, that this is what we mean to these, and this is so that whenever you read the paper, you will have more understanding, that something that authors want to say, you will understand the same thing. You'll not go beyond the boundaries of what author states. Moving on. If you let me straightly take you to the conceptual diagram. This is a conceptual diagram that authors have made. There are certain things, dynamic capabilities, and the variables of dynamic capabilities, and operational capabilities, then the variables or constructs of operational capabilities, then the outcome into two outcome variables, which is environmental innovation and benefits. So what author is trying to establish a combined view or framework between operational capabilities and dynamic capabilities to achieve environmental innovations and benefits. Ultimate reaping out benefit is the objective of any organization. So let us look at the method. If you see here, the method states that it's a comprehensive synthesis of academic literature on stakeholder engagement. And this is a systematic review approach. And here they have said that if they were searching for sustainability, then they have searched for these keywords. Like they have searched for ecology as sustainability, they have used eco-innovation, green technology, or renewable. So there are multiple keywords that have been used. And similarly for other themes too. So these are the keywords that have been used. Then it comes, how did they search and where did they search? So they said that they have searched literature presented by the peer-reviewed journals. So they have searched into peer-reviewed journals, and they have searched into two leading academic electronic databases. So if you see, the ABI Inform and ABSCO are the two very prominent as well as wider databases for peer review publications. So they searched through those. After searching, they reached to 1079 titles. So from 1079 papers, now the funnel is of 1079 papers, but is it actually useful, or is it actually um, possible for somebody to review 1079 papers or synthesize those, or what should be done to create a matrix of what is important to the objectivity of this paper and what is not? So what they applied is they applied a screening process. So in the screening process, they developed an inclusion and exclusion criteria. So going through to that inclusion and exclusion criteria, they retained 97 papers relevant to the research question. So now, if you see that when they started, they have discussed that how did they start, and when they searched, where did they search, when they collected the funnel, they had number of papers, and then when they're actually filtering them out in the funnel, this is the criteria of inclusion and exclusion that they have opted. So they excluded anything that had another language. So they have used the language English. So anything that was not in English language has not been reviewed. Then something that is into private sector, and any study that did not include the private sector form, that they have not included, or any study which was published before 1970, they have not included. And what they have included is something that got published between 1970 to 2014. So by having a look at it, you can see that how much transparency authors have maintained throughout, from selection of the paper to procedure to screening to extraction and synthesis. And after that, they explained the results one by one. They started from journals and rankings, that what journals they found, the type of research that they found, that they got majority of the studies empirically done, and then stakeholder types that are being used. Then they discussed the hierarchical capacity based framework that they were working on, and they have discussed it one by one. So all the things given there, I mean, all the three facets given in the framework have been discussed. So they discussed it one by one, and every paper that they have included, they have discussed. So now these kind of findings are not hidden. if you see, they have discussed everything. So they could not afford to put anything that they think of. They will have to spell out what literature actually speak about, and they did it. So this is the way a science, a systematic review paper need to be planned and executed. I just scroll through to the paper so that you know that what has been done. And in the discussion, if you see, a lot of discussion has been done related to the review findings, and they have discussed that how future research should be based on it. So this was one sample of a systematic literature review. But let me give you some common points that when it comes to the structure, there are some common points that need to be understood. I shown you one sample and show you different samples. This is another paper of systematic literature review, and this is on trade show marketing literature. So when you look at this, let me straightly take you to the method side of it, because systematic literature review is a method in itself. So see, here you find the review methodology. So if you see, they have established that the present review follows a well-established tradition of systematic literature review. And what they did is that they have the current review specifically targeted peer-reviewed journals. And in these peer-reviewed journals, they have focused on certain areas, right? Like tourism, geography is something that they looked at. And then they said that the review targeted through the articles published between 1980 to 2014. And they have given a region, that the region of our sample included trade show articles published between 1980 to 2014, because it was largely erratic. So they have given a region. Then they said that, sorry, they have looked at ABI informed by ProQuest, Scopus, Science Direct, Web of Science. So here is a point. If you have seen in the previous paper, there were only EBSCO and ProQuest, which have been scrolled through. But here, authors have scrolled through to several other databases, whether it was elsewhere Science Direct or it was Scopus. So they have searched through that too. Let me now show you the another one. This is on marketing ethics. So if you look at the methodology of this paper, you'll find some common points. So this paper has taken and some journals that they have spelled out, and they have taken some period and percentages, and then they said after that, after establishing it, that why they have done it into this, that why these specific journals are being considered. So what they are doing is they're saying that we are reviewing only something which is being published in these journals. So why these journals? Because these journals are the prominent journals in this field. These journals publish the rigorous research in this field. So you need to have a logic that why you have chosen these journals. And then they are saying that they have second floor, or a second step that they have followed is the search into the electronic databases of these, and the third appropriate search that they made was into keyword in between um, this time frame, and something that they got is 930 contributions that they got. So something if you see as common, every one of these is talking about how did they reach to the number of papers that they have collected and number of papers that they are reviewing. So you need to understand that in systematic literature reviews, it is important to have everything in a very transparent and clear manner. If it is not transparent, then it is not a systematic literature review. It can be a literature review, but not systematic one. The systematic literature review spell out everything very clearly for about every step. There can be different ways of organizing the literature systematically. And when we say that the ways of organizing these literature systematically, there are different templates, I would say, or there are different types or methods under the systematic literature review or that complement to the systematic literature review. So you may like to review a domain on theory. So you may like to see that how one domain or one theory is contributing to the other one. And I'll show you a sample of it. Second, you may say that you develop a structure, you develop a framework, and you develop propositions or review literature based on that particular structure. So you keep a structure, you develop a structure, and then you review the literature based on that structure or give propositions on that structure. Third one is the hybrid review. Hybrid reviews are the advanced reviews where you either bring the statistics components into it, or you bring the rating methods, or you club both literature review as well as conceptual or theories in one paper and give different multiple angles to it. So a hybrid review you publish, and you do a meta-analysis or you do a bibliometric analysis. So when it comes to systematically organizing the literature review, these are probable areas that you can opt for or types that you can opt for. So let us discuss to each one of these. When it comes to domain or theory based reviews, what you are doing is your objective is to look at the progress of one theory. So one theory which may be a popular theory, for example, it can be a two-factor theory. Two-factor theory more come into the management psychology or human resource management. And this two-factor theory, you're seeing into the marketing domain, you're saying that how it get applied on consumers or how get it applied on sales people. So you are combined to do something together, that how the performance of this has been in this particular domain. So if you see, the paper that I'm showing to you as a sample is about resource based theory in marketing. So what authors are doing, if you can see, understand only by the title, that authors are talking about that how research based theory RBT has been used in marketing. So, and this is what exactly they have done. They are looking at the literature and synthesizing that how RBT have been used in marketing literature. So first they have explained about RBT, what RBT is, and then they have taken different assumptions that what RBT is about in marketing area. They have given the different definitions opted by different scholars in the term of terminology, and they have discussed about the criticisms of RBT in marketing, then RBT theory in marketing, what it is that they have given, and they have given different perspectives. The perspective one, like talk about RBT applied in marketing domains, then they have illustrated that what have been the main findings of this literature, and then they have given the second perspective, they have solved the second perspective. So basically the two perspective that they talked about is either market based or the firm based. So they argued that how a firm should have maintain the resource baseline. It should be that whether something required as per the market need, or it should be according to the capacity of the firm. So they took it and they reviewed it, and every literature which was under it, they reviewed it, and they have given a proper justification that why there are different perspectives, and how different marketing uh, the publication outlets have acted on the usage of RBT, how marketing scholars think that RBT related theories or RBT can be helpful to them. So you may like to pick up a popular theory and review it for your particular domain like they did. So there are a number of popular theories coming in, and there are you may like to see the progress of those in your domain. So this is domain-based review. Second that you can look at is the structured review or the framework-based review. The framework or structure-based review answer these questions: that what have been done and what have you done, and where this has been done, where it will be applicable, why this should be done, and why you have done it, and how you done it. So in the structured reviews, if you see, these are a little bit different. In this, you take one diagram, and in this diagram you keep a flow, you make it structure, and then in that structure you you answer to why, how, and other questions. So if you see that these authors are trying to make it really clear that they have investigated the search through the online databases such as EBSCO, JSTOR, ProQuest, Google Scholar, Academia, ResearchGate, ResearchNet, Sage Journal, Science Direct, Springer, Taylor and Francis, all. And when they have developed the review structure here, then they answered that what do we know about international franchising? It's something that they are addressing. And going on, they are addressing that why people should need to know more about international franchising, because authors are reviewing international franchising, so they are making it clear that why it is important. So instead of giving just 2 bullet points that why it is important, they're clearly making authors, readers and other community stakeholders understand that why should people know about it, what are the valid reasons in the available literature that one should read about it, and then they focus on other questions. So structured reviews answer these questions: that why should one know it, how should one know it, and whom it is useful to. All these questions should be answered during the uh, review. And like this, where and what research has been done. So they, if you want to talk about the industries that on which this has been done, if you want to talk about the geographies, that these are the geographical areas, or if you want to talk about the publication outlets that have hosted it, so you can talk about it. And something like I said that you cannot miss is the future research. So how future research can be, should be there. Now let us move on to more of the hybrid kind of review. In hybrid kind of review, it's a consolidation of uh, uh, either statistics or conceptual diagrams or different concepts or theories from different domains. So you're making everything together. These are the paper my own I'm showing to you. This is one paper that we did recently. In this paper, what we did is we chosen certain we searched through certain keywords, and after these keywords we develop a rating method. So if you see the methodology, we have chosen to ABI inform and only peer reviewed journals, and we got approximately 9,000 peer reviewed titles, and we had to then narrow down to these titles. So we have considered only the prominent journals, and these were the keywords that have been used. And what we did is we opted for a rating method. What this rating method is, that we know we are synthesizing this literature, who understands it, and what according to our purpose. We have kept a purpose, and we are the best person who can understand this any paper that we are reading that fits into the purpose or not. We want to understand that which B2B thinker are you? I mean, in literature, which thinking or thought process is coming or emerged in the literature? And we are saying that, okay, this has been actually focusing into the B2B or not, B2B has been explicitly mentioned or not, selling techniques have been mentioned or not. So there are different variables that we kept, and based on the coverage, we give them a rating. So more spectrum is being covered, the more higher rating is being given, and the less spectrum is being covered, we given them a lower rating. And somebody who got 0, we did not consider them. So then after that, what we did is we applied the factor analysis on it, or the tandem clustering on it. And this has helped us out in understanding the school of thoughts, that what is going on in this B2B selling and what are the kind of approaches available. So if you see, this helped us out in reaching to the diagram that I'm showing, and we could identify that which are the the clusters available, and how can we name that particular cluster. So we found that, okay, there are transactionists or blue suitors or partners or servants. So that has helped us out in reaching to a very interesting finding. And something that we really did not miss was the scientific rigor that was there. So we focus on both conceptual building or conceptual framing in that prior literature and what it can lead to. Let me show you the second one. This is really interesting. And this is something that I was talking about, that how nostalgia has stepped into marketing and what is there for the future research. So in this particular research paper, we first addressed and studied the journey of nostalgia, and then we read it in future scope of work of nostalgia in marketing. So something that we started studying is the what nostalgia is and how nostalgia has been defined. So from the psychological angle, we have studied the nostalgia, and then we see that how what it has been traditionally, then what are the modern definitions says, what are the postmodern definitions says, how it is emerging into the today's arena. So this is what all we did, and then we looked at the ontology of nostalgia. We looked at different school of thoughts that has emerged in nostalgia. So we looked at the psychological school, sociological school, managerial school, and marketing school. So how nostalgia has stepped from psychology to management and then to marketing is something that we synthesized. And then what we did is we also, like, if you look at the methodology, we have spelled it out because it's a hybrid review. So we have not applied certain checkups, because when we were collecting the literature, we found that there were many prominent research which were being done on psychology, but they were not part of the ranking systems or indexing systems. So if we could have applied that filter, we had a fear that we will miss out on these. So what we did is we executed the study on a threefold synthesis. So like we first tracked to the evolution of nostalgia, that how it has came into from the psychology, or it was in psychology, and then we have considered that how modern postmodern definitions are coming up into it, and then we see that how we can have certain determination of the application. How can we determine the application of nostalgia? And then we integrated everything. Then how did we integrate, and how did we see that how nostalgia has transferred into business practices? There were certain hats that we noted. We keep on reading and noting everything, and then we synthesized it. So this is how we did. And then we presented that how nostalgia can have an extension in marketing practices. So if you see, this diagram has helped us out on reaching that how nostalgia can be presented into multiple ways. So I mean, this is why I'm saying it as a hybrid review. So if you see, we have opted for ontology, we have opted for a process, we have presented the strategy in threefold ways. There is a conceptual diagram. So when you are taking something from something from one or other types, then it becomes a hybrid. It becomes a mix of various techniques that you are using. If you're a beginner, I would strongly advise you not to go for hybrid reviews. You should go for one of the technique of systematically organizing the literature. The another sample that I'm showing you that we have recently published as a review in Journal of Promotion Management is that it is more of a conceptual review and a mix between conceptual as well as literature review. So I say it hybrid because it's more of a literature review presented into a conceptual way. So if you see, the objective is given here, that the objective was to identify inconsistencies by examining and synthesizing different concepts. So it means we have used different concepts and we are identifying the inconsistencies. And something that we have used is we have incorporated concepts from consumer psychology, human senses, marketing practices, and then how our investigation went is our investigation went through numerous examples. Like I was asking in the beginning, that something like that come that shows you that that has been published as a story or that has been published as a web blog, that what would you do? And this is actually an expert view, then you'll have to really give it a due consideration. Then how do you do it? So we said that we have founded this study into two phases. The first phase is an attempt to combine nostalgia concepts and its application through the conceptual framework, and in the second phase we synthesize it and give in the 5 influencing clusters. So what we are saying is that in the first phase, we are not claiming anything. We are just collecting it and we are reaching to the conceptual diagram. And once when we have the conceptual diagram ready, then we are synthesizing only something which is fit into this conceptual diagram. So this is what we developed as a method. So this is the conceptual diagram first we made by having an understanding. And once when we had this conceptual diagram, anything which was fit into this conceptual diagram was only synthesized. Something which does not fit this in conceptual diagram, we did not review that. So this these are the kind of reviews that you may like to write over the period of time. And if you're a beginner, you are exploring that how you should do, then you should write a general review like this. In this kind of general review, if you see, when we started by understanding what international marketing is, and we understood that what is the conceptual domain of international marketing, how international marketing has progressed over the period of time, what is the new classification of international marketing. And if you see here, we have given a method, like how did we plan this paper, how the identification of dimensions or keywords have been, what is the time frame that we consider, what is the domain focus, what we did, what authors and articles have been taken, what are the publication outlets that we considered. So all these, how this has been done, has been spelled out. So if you're a beginner, you may like to just opt for a simple meta-analysis that we did, or meta-analysis that when you have number of papers, you would like to opt for one of the statistical technique and apply a meta-analysis. The last sample that I'm showing you, this is the last one, yeah, is a bibliometric review. In the bibliometric review gives some answers that whom you should read. There are popular authors for popular theories, and something that you think is relevant when something is getting citations, though that is not true, but That is not a rule of thumb, but yes, we can say that up to some extent, the number of citations shows the number of the strength of a paper. And influential journals or influential themes, that which journals you should read and which themes you should read. So you may apply the bibliometric analysis to systematically organize the paper. So if you see, they have applied this bibliometric analysis on safety climate. Let me take you through to the method section. In the method section, you'll see that what they have done is they have done Salina bibliometric citation analysis network that they have used, and they have done it into OS viewer. They considered the Web of Sciences. They have given the key terms that they have searched upon and the refinement. So after refinement, this is what they got, and based on this, they have performed the analysis. And when they have done analysis, then they considered the then they found the results, and they could reach that which are the most influential work and the most influential themes, or which are the most productive authors whose research have got citations, or how the thematic building is being done and how the core network citations are working. So you can do it through the help of VOS viewer too. Well, now finally I would like to give you some tips as a conclusion. You need to choose a topic that matches to your taste and state. I have a research question. Second is that you need to identify the relevant literature by a systematic way. So how did you reach to something relevant? You need to spell it out. And you need to bring a right balance into the depth and the concept. You need to focus on concept and not on studies. You need not to see that how many studies are there. You need to see what concept you are building on and what can be useful. And you need to have a coherent in the article structure. So you cannot put anything anywhere. You need to have the systematic literature. You should actually look systematic, drive some meaningful conclusions and a future research agenda. My best wishes for your future research, and would like to see and have more systematic literature review papers. This make us learn more. So thank you so much everyone for joining this seminar. I may look at the chat box and have a certain question answers. Let me take a look at it. Oh, so I have a question like, can a systematic literature review paper be written by beginner researchers? Yes, it can be written by a beginner researcher, and I think you should read as few and then plan your own. If there is any specific template to be used, I have shown you a couple of templates, and you may like to choose one of these to write your study. And there is a question. Oh, there are questions regarding contact and recordings. Okay, how you get ensure that you have looked at all, that you should be very careful when you're choosing the keywords. So anything that can possibly capture something important falling in that domain, you should not miss out any of the keyword. And second is the possible databases. So you should search it through all the possible databases. So keywords and databases that you are searching are really important to get ensure that anything that you want to include got included. Okay, There is a question that states that when you work on a particular topic and claim such work that has not been done in your subject area, how do you go about it? You should have a very significant region of choosing something out of your research area. And if you're saying, for example, if you're saying that something has been done that has been done in medical sciences or engineering, then first I would say that search something similar being done in your area. If it is not, then why having that in your area would be helpful. So you should have something really significant if you claim that why you have chosen something out of the area. You can do that, and that may come by the contribution, like I have shown you that how a psychological concept has become very useful for marketers. So you should have enough material to justify that. So at what time did you decide it was okay to publish COVID related papers? When we see that the world could not come out of the pandemic. I mean, there were efforts being made, but it was being extended every time. So we decided that yes, this is probably gonna be a little long, and therefore it would be interesting to see how economy and business would act. Then we decided we some of the editors we got some formal and informal calls, and we decided that yes, okay, let us include it. So this is how we did. That is what somebody has asking the process of publishing in a good journal. I think it should be a different session where we can speak about what should be the process of publishing in a good journal. Probably this is not like here the focus has been on on s- uh, writing a systematic literature review paper. Uh, Thank you so much, everyone. Yes, if I may refrain sharing the presentations, but I think I have mentioned everything that has came out. And somebody is asking now about difference between a systematic literature review and the literature review you do for thesis writing. Like I said in the beginning when I start, that a systematic literature review is for community, not only for you, your own PhD. I mean, a literature review chapter that you do for your PhD for your own self. This is not for the community. Review papers are for community, not for your own self. So that is the major difference. How do you decide? Somebody is asking that how do they decide that which paper or book is suitable for literature review? Is the criteria depends on. You need to make some general search and see how many documents are there. If the number of documents are higher, then you need to apply some checkups to reduce them. And if the number of documents are low, then probably you would like to see that why these are low and why these are important to study. So something like we discussed is over flooded or not being done need to be addressed adequately and with the logic. Uh, we have discussed about the processes. I think these are the questions that came in the beginning. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and I'm hopeful that this session has helped you out in understanding the process of writing systematic literature reviews and understanding the literature review. And I would invite Dr. Thilini Chaturika Gamge for having a vote of thanks. Now, from my side, I'm very thankful to University of Sabaragamuwa and Professor Jayanta Devasiri, Sage Publications, for hosting this and having me here. I'm very thankful. My best wishes to everyone. Enjoy the proceedings.
Thank you, Professor Sudhir. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose votes of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of the Research and Publication Unit of the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, and the Sage Publishing, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the resource person of this session, Professor Sudhir Rana, Associate Professor of Marketing and the Chairperson at the Fortune Institute of International Business, New Delhi. At the outset, I would like to express my profound gratitude to the Dean of the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, Professor Athula Janapala, for his great initiation in uplifting the education and research culture in South Asia. Further, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor M.S.A. Maslam, Chairman of the Research and Publication Unit of the Faculty of Management Studies, for his unconditional support and tireless efforts in making this event a success. I would also like to express our sense of obligation to SAGE for their kind guidance for this event and also in helping us in strengthening various mechanisms. In particular, the support rendered by Ms. Arathi David, Director Publishing, Ms. Neetu Kala, Associate Vice President, Journals Commissioning and Management, and Ms. Rachna Segal, Assistant Commissioning Editor, Journals, was enormous. Further, marketing team of SAGE, including Sania Puri and Archana Jha, headed by Ms. Smithri Sudhakaran, provided a tremendous support in making this event a success. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the audience, including all senior professors, senior academics, visiting faculty, researchers, industry participants, and research students for their active participation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a webinar like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling a month ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues who know their job and are result-oriented. So I'm extremely grateful to all the members of the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, and Sage Publishing India Private Limited for their continuous support. I cannot thank everyone for their involvement and willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zone. Thank you all once again.